It's deploying to Cloud Run, and there we go. I didn't have to click anything. It just automatically started building it and then automatically appear on the website at my own domain. So you've coded with AI, you've vibe coded an app. Now what? How do you make your app public? How do you share it with other people or use it yourself outside of Google AI Studio? Hi, my name is Callum, also known as Wanderloots, and welcome to today's video on deploying apps from Google AI Studio. How to make your app public and best practices to consider along the way. I know deploying and hosting an app can be pretty overwhelming, so my goal for today is to make this as easy as possible, showing you step by step how you can do it yourself. Google AI Studio is one of my favorite places to build apps for free, using the extremely powerful Gemini 2.5 Pro and soon Gemini 3. The build section was recently updated to be even easier to use with more features. In the last video, I showed you how I build apps for free in Google AI Studio with AI coding or vibe coding. But Google AI Studio is a sandbox, like most AI coding websites. To actually start using the app or share it with others to use, you need to deploy your app and host it somewhere. While the tool I use today is Google AI Studio, I also show you how to deploy apps from GitHub, which means this tutorial actually applies to every app building ecosystem that connects to GitHub. In today's video, I walk through a quick overview on building apps in Google AI Studio, including a few new features. Then, I show you two different options for deploying your app, Google Cloud Run and through GitHub using Vercel or Netlify. I also give context on why deploying this way makes it easy to test and add more features to your app. Finally, I'll give some tips on the next steps for your app, including how to get Gemini to help you improve and secure it. If you found this video helpful, please like, hype, and subscribe, as I am working on making YouTube my full-time career, so any support you can give me is very much appreciated. Now let's deploy an app. So I just want to note that today's video is going to focus on deploying apps, on taking the apps that you've built in Google AI Studio and making them public. But there are a few updates to Google AI Studio in the last week, so I just wanted to give a very brief overview on the app building process. And if you're interested in learning how I build apps with Google AI Studio, I have a whole video here that a lot of people have been finding very helpful, where I walk through context engineering, prompt engineering, and generally just a bunch of tips on how to vibe code. But when you get into Google AI Studio, we have different options here now. They've changed the interface a little bit, where you can vibe code apps in build, you can chat with the models, so this is the old chat version, and then you can monitor usage and more in the dashboard. So today we've been working on the build section, and you get a bit of a different UI than we had before. My recently viewed apps are on the side here. I can click on my apps and it'll load them here. We can go to the gallery and see how other people have built apps. And what's new is they now have this option to select specific generative AI features that you can include in your apps. So for example, if you want to create a conversational voice app, you can just click on that and it will automatically bring in that specific style of prompt into the app that you want to build. And let's say you want to bring in Google search data, you want an AI-powered chatbot, you want to transcribe audio, and you want to bring in a map feature, because why not? You can go through and you can toggle all of those different generative AI features and then explain how you want these features to get tied together. You also have the option now to change your model if you want to change down from Gemini 2.5 Pro, if you want to go to Flash, but I would stick with 2.5 Pro because it's a much better coder. And that's it. You can just click build and then you'll start getting into the actual app with the code. We're going to see more and more AI features being incorporated into apps, but I also want to give a quick warning that the more features you bring in with generative AI, the more probabilistic the app becomes and less deterministic. And just quickly, what that means is if we're bringing in all these AI features, it introduces a little bit of unpredictability into your app because you're dealing with a large language model that operates on probability, not determinism. So it's not if this, then that. It's if this, then we'll try to get to that based on the statistic likelihood of what that is. So just keep that in mind as you're building here, that in my experience, it's better to build the core app for what you want and then layer in each individual AI feature afterwards. And just one more thing to consider too is that the more AI features you bring in, the more it's going to cost you in the long run. And that's where we get into the API and monitoring the usage. So just keep that in mind, that if you have all these AI powered features, it means you need an AI model to run them, which means you might have additional costs once you actually get your app into production. All right, with that, let's take a look at the app we built last time. Today's video is going to focus specifically on the deploy side of things, this little rocket ship up on the top, or through GitHub, which I'll show you in a moment. And in the last video, we went through and we created this application, this idea inbox. It has a basic text input. We can upload templates here, which means that it will take the note that we wrote here and it'll apply the template. And then when you click save, it will download the file to my computer. And the idea here is that we're building a progressive web app, I'll be able to move this to my phone home screen, open this app and quickly jot ideas in, and then send it over to Obsidian, which is my note-taking app. And once the idea is here inside of Obsidian, it'll appear inside of my Obsidian base, which is a way for me to organize all of my notes into a database. And this is my project management base. And you can see the idea has appeared here because it has that idea template applied to it. So that's basically what we built last time very quickly. And if you want to learn more about bases and how they work, I recommend checking out my playlist that goes more into Obsidian bases. But in this last video, I did more than just code the app. I just want to quickly mention this because I think it's a really important element to coding with AI, where I also showed you how I prompt different document creation inside of Google AI Studio so that, for example, if you need to refresh the conversation or refresh the page, you don't lose all the context of what you've been building here. So you can go through then, check out the architecture, and have an exact idea on how we have built this app. Google will use this to answer your questions. So if you have these docs here, it just makes things so much easier. So if you want to learn more about prompt engineering and context engineering, then check out the first video, because today we are focusing on getting this into production. And what do I mean by that? For example, this is my website at wanderloots.com. All of the files for this website have been deployed to a hosting platform so that they can be viewed at wanderloots.com. I have the same thing for my digital garden, which is where I take my Obsidian notes and make them public. And this is at wanderloots.xyz. So a select number of my Obsidian files have been moved into a GitHub repository and then deployed through Netlify. So that means that they can appear at wanderloots.xyz and you can see this. It's available to the public. In contrast, this application here, this idea inbox, it is inside of a sandbox on Google AI Studio, which means that no one else can see this. And I can't use this, for example, on my phone. So what we need to do then is we need to get up into this section here where we need to deploy the app or save it to GitHub and connect GitHub to a deployment system. And if you watched the last video, you know that I had an error with the GitHub connection, and I've actually been able to fix that. So I'm just going to very quickly show you how to turn on the GitHub connection, because GitHub enables what's called versioning or version control, which means that as you make changes, you're able to go through and track those changes in GitHub, and you can always roll back if you need to. And just as a quick note before we really get into this, I like to duplicate my app before I start making any major changes. So I had my basic idea inbox prototype, and then up here I clicked copy app, and I created a deploy version, just so that if I go through and make some changes and happen to break something, at least I've got this backup copy over here. And GitHub kind of gets rid of the need to do that. Because what I can do is if I save this to GitHub, I push all of these code files to a separate area, and I can always get a copy of them later. Now, I can just click download app and get a zip file of this entire application and re-upload it to Google AI Studio or upload it to GitHub, but having this direct connection to GitHub just makes things a lot easier. So the way that I was able to fix the problem I had last time, if I tried to use Google AI Studio in Chrome, I think because I had a different GitHub account connected to a different Google AI Studio, it was running into authentication issues. But now if I click on it, I was able to authenticate and connect GitHub. So I actually haven't pushed this to GitHub yet, sent the files there, because I wanted to show you how this works. And what you can see here is it has this AI summary of everything that we've done so far in this application. So we need to stage and commit all the changes. Because this is the first time I'm pushing this to GitHub, all of these files were added. So why don't we click stage and commit? Cool, there we go. Now there are no changes to commit. So for example, what I could say is, based on the structure of our application, can you please write a deployment guide on how we can deploy this app through Google Cloud Run and GitHub via Vercel. I think there was maybe an autocorrect there. And just while that works, if I go back to my GitHub for a second, we can see now that I have this idea repository that was generated from Google Gemini AI Studio repository template. All of my files are in here. So what's nice about this is this exists as a private repository on my Wanderloots to GitHub account. And I can connect that GitHub to something like Vercel, which is a deployment platform and hosting platform, or Netlify, which is the same thing, another version. And basically what it will do is it will take all of these files, it will send them to Vercel or Netlify, and it will go through and it will build the application at a custom domain in the same way that I can run through Google Cloud Run. But I just want to show you quickly how GitHub works, because for example, Google AI Studio has written a deployment guide. If I click save on this app, it will save the change of this deployment guide. And if I go click on the save to GitHub now, it pops up and it shows you the different files that were created here, and it automatically creates a change log. So if I click stage and commit changes, and then go back to GitHub and refresh here, we can see that there's now 3 commits. So I have a full and complete version history of everything that's happened in this application. Every time I push to GitHub, it creates a new snapshot of exactly the changes that I've made. It's version control. So what's really nice about this is, let's say you go through, and remember at the beginning I mentioned the probabilistic nature of AI versus deterministic nature. If Gemini goes in and tries to deploy a Docker file, and that's not what I'm trying to do, in GitHub, at least I have that snapshot of the previous changes, so I can always go back and say, oh, wait a minute, maybe I want this version of the index. And I could go and I could click on this version of the code to go find that old version of the index file, and I could just either upload it or replace it inside here to roll it back. And that's just one key limitation to note here in Google AI Studio, is that you can only send files to GitHub. You can push, you can't pull it back. So if you want to pull it back, you're going to have to go replace the file in here. So every time you add a new feature, every time you make some major change or major fix or debug, it's worth saving the app, pushing it to GitHub so that you have that version control. If you want me to make a dedicated video on GitHub or pushing files or doing version control or anything like that, please let me know in the comments. By you asking questions, it really helps me focus the video in a way that's going to be the most helpful for you. Now that you understand how to version control, especially as we start to get into changing the app a little bit for deployment, why don't we actually deploy the app? So I'm going to start by showing you how to deploy the app through Google Cloud Run, and then I'll get into how to connect GitHub to an external service like Vercel so that you can launch your app through that. Okay, so if you're deploying through Google Cloud Run, all you have to do is click Deploy App, and then we need to select a cloud project. So I'm going to create a new project. I'm going to call it Idea Inbox, create project, and it's going to tell me now that in order to deploy the app to Google Cloud Run, the app is going to become accessible via a public URL. And a really important element, I can't overstate this, is that the API key that you've connected to with Google AI Studio will not be exposed in the app, but will still be used by the application. So that's a major benefit of using Google Cloud Run, is you don't have to deal with the security of your API key, because Google Cloud Run, because it's connected to Google AI Studio, will do that for you. So basically what that means is every day you get a certain limit on your Google AI Studio API key. Maybe it's 500 prompts or 100 prompts or 1,000 prompts. Depends on how you're using the app. If you expose your API key in the application, for example, if we go to a website and click View Page Source, if you're not careful, the API key could be exposed inside of this code here or viewable in the console on the side. So we don't want that, because what that means is someone could just very easily hack into your app, use up all your API keys, steal it, use it in their app. That's no good. So a major benefit of using Google Cloud Run is that they will do that protection for you. Okay, so now that I've explained the API key, the goal is that this app is going to be available via public URL. And we've created a Google Cloud project, but we need to enable billing. So basically for this, you just need to sign into your account, click agree and continue. And what's nice here is that there's no automatic charges, so you won't be charged unless you manually activate a full pay-as-you-go account. So that's pretty key. And now I'm going to click Start Free. I'm not going to get into this right now, but there is a walkthrough here on different elements if you want to learn how to use this. So you can always go through that tutorial if you want. All right, I'll turn on dark mode just to help protect your eyes. Cool. So now we can see that I can click on this project here, Idea Inbox, and we've got everything connected here. So let's go back to Google AI Studio and click refresh. It's now verifying the project. Now that I've connected the billing, I'm able to deploy the app. And just before you do this, I always recommend checking out the platform terms of service. You want to make sure that whatever tool you're using to deploy your app doesn't have hidden fees, doesn't have something that's maybe giving up your intellectual property. With Google, it's a bit of a different story, because obviously they're a very well-known company, but I always recommend reviewing the terms of service. But maybe that's just the lawyer in me. But now let's click Deploy App. There we go. It's deploying to Cloud Run. So you can see here that the app is using the API key, and most importantly, the whole reason that we're here is we got this URL, Idea Inbox Deploy, and this long string. So if I click on this, I get taken to my app, and I have this URL that I can share. That's pretty cool. So now this app is a fully functioning app that I can share with people. I can take this URL and I can run it from my phone, and I will get that app I was talking about. And if we click on this here, we can open it up in Google Cloud Run, and we can see everything about this application. So there's a lot of information here, and I don't want to get too into it at the moment. Please let me know if you want me to go in and explain any more elements of this. We have the URL that it's deployed at. We have the ability to test the app here and run it. We can edit and deploy a new version of the app. And if we go back to the overview here, we can see that there's a few more elements here. We can write functions, and we can even connect a GitHub repository. So what that means is, let's say we are done working in Google AI Studio, we're now running the app fully on our own, or we've connected to GitHub. We can just connect the repository here, and then we don't need to use the prototyping system of Google AI Studio. We can just continue the app in full production, which basically just means that it's available for others to use and it's ready for others to use. And just before I show you how this looks on my phone, I just want to mention that a key element here is that we get this redeploy app button. A reminder to please like, hype, and subscribe if you're finding this video helpful. Any support you can give me is very much appreciated. The more people support me in making these videos, the more videos I can make to hopefully help as many people as possible. If you're looking for more ways to support me so I can keep making these videos, please also consider joining my membership. Also, please let me know in the comments if you have any questions about what I'm teaching you today, or if there's anything else that you would like to see me build. I'm happy to make more videos to help you out. Now let's keep building. Let's say I want to add a new feature, like a dark and a light mode toggle. I can go in, have Gemini run and code for me, implement that new feature, save the app, and then I can just redeploy the app, and that feature will be available there. So effectively what this means is I can now keep working in development. I can keep making features, I can keep changing things, updating it as I go, and whenever I hit a new version that's ready to be made public, I can just re-click the deploy button and make that app available on this website right here. Cool, there we go, it just finished. Go to preview. I mean, that looks pretty ugly, so I'm gonna have to fix that a little bit. Apparently that's the dark mode. And this is, again, of course, where as you go through, you need to iterate and make changes. If I don't like that, I can just click refresh and don't save. So I just told it to please debug. So just as a quick note while this is working here, this is an example where I implemented a partial feature that only slightly worked, right? This is not what I imagined for a dark mode. So I didn't save the app and I didn't push it to GitHub because I want to make sure that I can fix this feature before I create that saved copy. The app was working better before over here, so I don't want to redeploy a partially added feature. So this is where now that the app is deployed, we have this production version available for other people, and we can keep going in and tweaking features in the development mode in Google AI Studio until a new feature is ready to go, and then we push it to production to make it available for everyone on that URL. So now it's just going through, it's coding it, it's fixing what was a CSS layering issue. So that'll just take a moment. Oh, I just want to note too, it took about 2 minutes for the deployment to happen. So if it's just loading for you and you're not sure if it's working or not, it probably is working. It's just taking time to push all the files to Google Cloud Run, set up the environment that it's going to deploy the app in, and then actually run the app. And just while this is going, as another tip, you'll notice that this is running everything through this one index.tsx file. So that means that every time Google wants to make a change, it's rewriting this entire file. What you can do is you can create something called a components folder, and we can have different components and different features included as separate files in here. This is called modular app building, and I highly recommend it because it makes it way easier for, rather than having Google have to write 600 new lines of code every time I want to make a change, it can go in and find just, for example, the dark mode toggle and fix only that feature. Because if it's going through and doing all of this and writing all of these hundreds and hundreds of lines of code, there's much more room for error. There we go. Go back to preview. Okay, that didn't seem to work. I'm not going to spend more time on that at the moment, but I just want to show you now what we can do is we can click save on the app, click save to GitHub. It's going to load the file differences. And specifically, you can see here, it's already automatically created a description to explain what we did here. So I'm going to stage and commit all changes. So now we have that snapshot, that version of it. And now I'm going to go over to deploy app, select the project, idea inbox. And because I selected that existing project, all I need to do is click redeploy app. And now it's going to go through and do that same process. And once that's done, when we refresh this page, we will have that malfunctioning dark mode feature implemented. Yay. There we go. So that deployed a lot faster. Let's click view app. Now we have the old version here, where if I just go and click refresh, you can see that we've got this new dark mode feature. But why don't we take a look at how this looks on my phone? Okay, so I'm just looking at my phone now, and what's really interesting is that the light mode actually works properly. The dark creates the whole screen that looks correct. So clearly there's just a disconnect here between the mobile version and the web version. But it looks like everything's working here. I can click, I have an idea. I should teach people about custom domains. Done. And now if I go down and click save note, cool, I can click download and it downloads the file. I have a little bit of work to do there to actually move that file into Obsidian to have it be where rather than just clicking download, I can go down and share and move it to Obsidian. But what I also want to show you just very quickly here is that this is a progressive web app. So if I click share, there's this button here, add to home screen. So if I click that, I can just add this to my home screen. And right away, I now get this actual application here on my phone screen. So I can click on that idea inbox and it takes me directly to the app itself. So this is that progressive web app that I was talking about before, where now that we have this app hosted somewhere, we can create basically a super easy version of it sitting on our phone in the same way that I have Google AI Studio on here. So that was a key goal here, so that I can just quickly open this. I can just jot down a thought. Again, I need to fix the feature here, but I could then click share to Obsidian. It would just save this to my Obsidian vault, and I'd be able to then access it from my phone rather than having to go in and actually open Obsidian itself. So it's cool that this progressive web app actually works, no problem. And I can just make as many changes as I want and keep updating that app. And I really get this personal app that I can build for myself and customize in any way I want to. Okay, now I just want to very quickly show you how we can do the same thing directly from GitHub without using Google Cloud Run, which gives you more flexibility on your hosting provider and on your deployment system. There's a major benefit in using GitHub. If I click refresh here, we should see the new deployment with the dark screen, the dark mode theme switcher, so that's now here. And basically what we can do is we can go over to another app like Vercel or Netlify. I use Netlify for my digital garden, and I use Vercel for most of my testing apps. Why don't we log into Vercel for a moment? So the first thing you need to do is create your account. I'm just going to create my account using GitHub directly. It just makes it a little bit easier because I know that I'm always going to be using Vercel directly from this GitHub account. So now what we need to do here is click install the GitHub application. We can choose if we want this to be installed in all repositories or only select ones. So I could, for example, find only the idea inbox if I wanted to, but I'm just going to install it into all of them for now because this is my separate test one. Cool. So now that I have signed in and connected my GitHub, you can see that I've got this idea app already here. So to start building the application to deploy it, all I need to do is click import and we get brought to a new project. So I'm going to just call this idea inbox. And this is where we start to get into a little bit more complex control here. We have the option for environment variables, which is where we would put our API key, for example, in the future. We can get into build settings, which we don't really need to touch at the moment. But the key one here is which framework preset do we want to use? For example, there's Vite, there's React, there's Next.js. There's a lot of different things that we can pick here. So if you're ever confused, which one should I be doing? You can always go back to your Google AI Studio. And this is just a major tip that I found for working with all this stuff is that it can be complicated, it can be confusing, especially if you're doing it for the first time. But you literally have a tutor that can help answer your questions immediately. So for example, I said, I'm deploying through Vercel. Which framework preset should I use? And it said, that's a great question, sycophantically. For deploying this application on Vercel, you should use the Vite framework. Because, and here's the explanation so you understand in the future. So if we go into the code, we can see that we have this Vite config file, which is pulling in the API key and it's dealing with running the React application. So that's great to know. I had a question and Google was able to instantly answer it because it has the context of my entire code base. So if you're confused at any point throughout this entire system, just go ask Google. So now that we know that we want to use Vite, I'm going to click deploy. There we go, it's deploying. Huzzah. Cool. So that took about maybe 20 seconds or so. And it's nice too, it's telling me there's some next steps. We have instant previews. So basically what that means is every time I make a change and save it in GitHub, it's going to automatically build the application for me, so I never have to manually do it. We can get into adding a custom domain, which is what I was talking about before, that I show you how to do this in the How I Publish My Obsidian Notes video. And let's just continue to dashboard so you can see what this looks like. Again, there's a lot of information here, and I'm not going to get too deep into it at the moment. I just want to show you a couple key elements here. One is that we've got the repository here. Another is that we can track the usage, and it gives us our own custom domain that points to this deployment. So if I click on idea inbox vercel.app, I get that same application here. And it seems actually like it works fine on this dark and light mode. So that must have just been a Safari issue versus a Chrome issue. But we have this fully functioning app, and now we have this idea inbox vercel.app. So it's kind of cool that we get this much better domain, in my opinion. It makes it very easy for me to share this with people. So I hope that shows you how you can use Vercel. We've got our deployments here. We've got our analytics, all the settings. If you do need to add your API key, we can do that in environment variables so that we keep it secret. And that's just actually something I want to bring up in a moment here, which is some tips on what else you should be asking Google Gemini to make sure that you're keeping your app safe. But for now, I just want to quickly show you how this app would rebuild. So we go over to deployment. And rather than adding an entirely new feature here, I'm just going to create a new file. Let's just call it Welcome to Wanderlust Tutorials. Click Save App, save to GitHub. We can see that it's got the new file here. Click stage and commit. So now while it's doing that, if we go back to our other app here, you can see I didn't have to click anything. By adding a new feature and pushing it to GitHub, it automatically built and made the change to the website directly. So this makes it super easy for you to make any changes, add more features as you go. And every time you make a feature that you're like, oh, you know what, this was great, I'm ready for people to test it out, or I want to start using this as part of my personal app, I can just push it and it will automatically build in Vercel and then automatically appear on the website at my own custom domain of ideainbox.vercel.app. So you can do the same thing with Netlify. There's a whole bunch of different hosting providers and deployment systems that you can do. All right, so now that you understand how to deploy from Google AI Studio, I know that there's a lot of features that you probably are thinking about adding. Like I mentioned at the beginning, we can supercharge our apps with AI by adding any of these features. You're only limited by your imagination on the ideas that you want to add to your app, all the features you want to introduce. But some of those features are more complex than others, and some of them have different safety considerations. So I just want to give very quickly a rapid fire overview on some other things you might want to think about as you move from developing in Google AI Studio to the production version on your live website. I'm just trying to make you aware of some of these considerations and perhaps how you can use Google AI Studio itself to answer your questions. Okay, so the first one I want to take a look at is persistent storage. And what do I mean by that? You have the ability to save files. Like in my app here, I might have a template that I upload, and I want to make sure that that template is saved across me being able to refresh the website so I don't lose something. That's called persistent storage. We have 3 different types. We have local storage, session storage, and database options, which is a backend version. Basically, session storage only stays for that particular session, so if you leave the page, you'll lose it. Local storage stays in your browser, despite being able to refresh, but I believe if you restart your computer, you might lose it. It probably depends on your settings. And then a database is your ability to save this with something else. If you go to Google Cloud Run, we've got options for lots of different services, like we have Cloud SQL, for example, cloud storage. Those are different versions of a backend database. So using Google Cloud Run, you have the option to connect it. Vercel has their version. I don't want to get too deep into that right now. It's just something to keep in mind is, do you need to have data saved? So for example, your prompt might be, what kind of storage should my app be using? Please do a Google search for my specific features, state-of-the-art 2025 best practices, and let me know what my options are. Google will give you an answer, and then you can kind of plan and iterate and go from there, update your roadmap, keep your docs in order. You can just keep building. Okay, another consideration is authentication. So authentication would be, for example, sign in with Google, sign in with your email. Is your app available for everyone, or are you blocking it? So that's something to ask Google how you should set it up, and Google Cloud Run has that option to control who can sign into it. So that's a key consideration. And again, I would prompt Google to ask what's the best way to set up authentication, considering you're using Vercel or considering that you're using Google Cloud Run. You can make it specific to your particular deployment. Then we get into security, things like API keys, user data, authentication, it's related. You have to set up things like API routes. So you want to make sure that that is secure, that only certain authenticated users are able to call the API, certain websites. That's just something to keep in mind. And that's honestly something that maybe I can make an entire other video about because there's a lot that can get in there. And on that note, you can always use a tool like Google or Perplexity or ChatGPT, whatever your favorite is, and ask questions about how your app could be better. What features do you need? What are your security best practices? This is not a static system here. We're operating with a dynamic, evolving system that you can just keep recalibrating over time. Another major consideration is to start with an MVP. Start with the simplest version of your app as possible and then iterate and add features as you go. If you try to add too many things all in one go, you're probably going to break it. So it's better to add one feature at a time, test it, make sure it works, and then add a new feature. And like I mentioned, introduce a component section, make this modular so each new feature has a separate file so that you can just test and iterate and make things better as you go without breaking everything that you've already built in your app. So there's a lot more things I could talk about here. I just wanted to quickly jot down some key issues that I've been having to iterate and fix. And again, feel free to let me know if you have any questions on this. I'm happy to make videos on anything that's going to help people out. So just let me know. We are dealing with this kind of clunky system where we have to make the changes in Google AI Studio, push it to Cloud Run, or push it to Vercel through GitHub. And for example, if we start building a backend, like I just mentioned, it could be a little complex. So there is also another tool called Firebase Studio, and they do a full stack AI workspace. This is also through Google. And basically what that means with full stack is not only are you building the front end like I was testing out here with this ability to just interact with the website, but we also have the option to have databases and API routes and all of the complexity that I just talked about. I've noticed it can be a little bit difficult to build in Google AI Studio, so I'm also planning on exploring Firebase Studio. So let me know if this is something that you've tried out or if it's something that you'd like me to explore, and I'd be happy to make a video on how we can actually get into full stack vibe coding. I know that was a lot of information and may have felt a little overwhelming, but I hope that this video showed you how anyone can make an app public. Anyone can use AI for coding and then connect that and deploy it and make it available for anyone. If you found this video helpful, just a reminder to please like and subscribe, as your support really means a lot to me. Also, if you have any questions about what I talked about today or any suggestions on what you would like to see me make in future videos, please leave them in the comments, as your feedback really helps me make videos that people value. If you're interested in learning more about AI tools or my day-to-day workflow, I have an AI learning playlist that goes more in depth on all of the tools I use, so I recommend checking that out. If you want to learn more about my note-taking, like I was showing you today with the idea inbox and how it integrates with AI, I recommend checking out my personal knowledge management playlist. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.